Under the twin suns of Valara Prime, the research base shimmered like silver glass against the red desert. Dr. Ethan Cole stood outside the main dome, watching the alien workers move in quiet harmony. Their movements were fluid, graceful, almost like music without sound. He had been here for 2 months now, teaching basic human biology to the Valari scientists. Most of them were polite but distant, studying him as though he was a strange animal from a forgotten world. But one of them was different, a maid named Lyra. Lyra was assigned to assist him in daily work, mostly to clean the lab and maintain the instruments. Yet she spent more time asking questions than dusting equipment. Her skin had a soft glow under the dome's white lights, and her eyes were curious like a child seeing rain for the first time. She spoke with a gentle voice that carried both confusion and wonder. "Dr. Ethan," she said one evening while arranging the sample containers, "why do humans need to reproduce? You already have many of your kind. Why make more?" Ethan looked up from his notes. He could tell she wasn't teasing. Her tone was purely academic, even innocent. The Valari were an old and powerful race, their numbers kept stable through artificial growth chambers. To them, reproduction was a mechanical process, something done for survival, not emotion. He smiled and tried to explain. "Humans don't only reproduce to survive," he said. "We do it because we feel love, because we want to share our lives with others, and because we want to create something that will live beyond us." Lyra tilted her head, puzzled. "Create something? Beyond you? You mean a copy?" "Not exactly," Ethan chuckled. "It's not a copy. A child is unique. It's like—" He paused, searching for a word she might understand. "It's like when a Valari crystal reflects light. The reflection isn't the same as the source, but it carries the same warmth." Lyra blinked slowly. "Strange. You make new life just because of warmth?" He nodded. "Yes, because of warmth, care, and connection. It's how humans continue not only our species but our hearts." She looked thoughtful, her long fingers pressing against her chin. That night she didn't speak again, but Ethan noticed her watching him closely, as if trying to see that invisible warmth he had spoken of. In the following days, Lyra became even more curious. She began recording everything he said about human biology. She studied the data of DNA, the fragile double strands that contained every piece of what made a human alive. For a species used to crystalline logic and coded birth, the chaotic beauty of organic life fascinated her. Sometimes Ethan caught her staring at her own hands, flexing her fingers as if wondering what it would feel like to create something living. "You're thinking again?" he teased once, breaking her quiet trance. "Yes," she replied softly. "I am thinking how humans trust nature more than machines. We make things with code. You make them with faith." That sentence stayed with Ethan long after the lights dimmed. There was something pure about her understanding, something he could never have explained with books or slides. A week later, Lyra asked if she could observe one of his basic lessons for the other Valari. He agreed, curious to see how she would react. During the class, he displayed an image of a human family. A mother holding her child, a father smiling beside them. The Valari scientists watched with mild interest, but Lyra leaned forward, her eyes wide. "Are they
connected?"
she asked. "In more ways than one," Ethan said. "The child shares their blood and their memories, but the connection goes deeper. It's made of care and love, something you can't measure." Lyra whispered something in her language, a word Ethan didn't know. Later she told him it meant lifelight, the Valari term for emotional energy, which they believed had faded from their species long ago. After the class, she approached him again. "If humans can pass warmth to another being, then it means emotions can reproduce too," she said. "Maybe that is your real method." Ethan was impressed. "That's a beautiful way to see it," he said gently. "Maybe that's true." From that day, Lyra began spending more time in the lab, often long after others left. She cleaned the instruments, organized his files, and studied the human models he kept for research. Sometimes Ethan would return late at night and find her sitting quietly, looking at holographic images of Earth's children playing in meadows or swimming in oceans. She didn't speak much, but her eyes told a story of wonder. To her, humans were mysterious creatures who not only created life, but also poured emotions into it. She began sketching diagrams in her notes, drawings of hearts connected by light, energy flowing between them. One evening, as the sun set and the lab glowed orange, Lyra turned to him with a soft expression. "Dr. Ethan," she said, "I think I understand a little now. You do not just make life, you continue it with feeling. Maybe I can learn this method too." Ethan laughed kindly, unaware of how seriously she meant it. "Learning to feel, Lyra, that's not something you can study in a lab." But she simply nodded, her eyes reflecting the golden sunset. "Still, I want to try." That quiet promise stayed between them like a spark waiting to ignite, the beginning of an experiment that would change both human and alien understanding forever. The next morning, the soft hum of the laboratory filled the air as the red dawn spread across Valara Prime. Lyra arrived early, as she always did. She moved with calm precision, placing data pads in neat stacks and checking the instruments for dust. But today there was something different in her. Her mind was filled with the thought of what Ethan had said the day before, that reproduction for humans was not only about creating life, but about sharing love and emotion. She couldn't stop thinking about it. When Ethan entered the lab carrying his mug of black coffee, he noticed her already working. "You're early again," he said with a smile. "Do you ever sleep, Lyra?" She looked up, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the morning light. "Sleep is not needed much for Valari," she said softly, "but I think better when the world is quiet." Ethan chuckled. "You think too much, maybe?" "Maybe," she replied. "But thinking brings understanding." He admired her curiosity. Many Valari scientists treated his lectures like duties, but Lyra treated them like discoveries. She had filled an entire notebook with human words on love, care, family, memory, and she asked about each one with a childlike seriousness. Later that day, Ethan began his lesson about human DNA. He projected a glowing image of a double helix rotating slowly above the desk. "This," he said, "is what makes humans human. Every cell carries this pattern. It's what passes from parent to child." Lyra watched the spiral of light turn slowly. "So," she said, "this is how you make more of yourselves?" "Yes," he nodded. "But DNA only carries the body, not the heart. That part comes from the things we do, how we care, how we feel." Her head tilted slightly. "How does the heart pass itself on, if not through DNA?" Ethan smiled gently. "Through stories, through memories, and through love. When we raise a child, we give part of ourselves, our kindness, our courage, onto them. That's another kind of reproduction." Lyra's expression softened. "Then love is a kind of code too," she said. He blinked, surprised. "Yes, in a way it is." After class, she stayed behind again. The lab was silent except for the low hum of the machines. Ethan worked at his desk, but he could feel her eyes watching him. Finally, she spoke. "Dr. Ethan, if I understand correctly," she said, "to reproduce like humans, one must give something of the heart." He nodded slowly. "That's right." Lyra looked down at her hands. "Then I want to try. I want to give something of my heart. I want to understand this method fully." Ethan set down his tablet, unsure how to answer. "Lyra, it's not an experiment you can just start," he said carefully. "It's something that happens naturally, through experience and care. It's not mechanical." She looked thoughtful but calm. "Still, I wish to try. You said humans share life through emotion. I want to know how that feels. Maybe I can learn by creating something with meaning." He smiled faintly, touched by her innocence. "Then maybe you should build something you can care for. It doesn't need to be alive, just something that matters to you." Her eyes brightened as if a door had opened in her mind. "Something to care for," she repeated. "Yes, I can do that." The following days were filled with quiet excitement. After finishing her cleaning duties, Lyra began collecting small pieces of unused equipment from the lab. Wires, circuits, old HoloLenses, anything that could fit together. Ethan didn't stop her. He wanted to see where her curiosity would lead. Each evening, she sat at the back of the lab, assembling something small and delicate. At first, Ethan thought she was building another cleaning drone. But as the structure took shape, he realized it was something different. It had a round head, short limbs, and a small light in its chest. "What are you making, Lyra?" he asked one night. She looked up, smiling shyly. "A child," she said simply. "A human one in my way." Ethan laughed softly. "That's quite a statement." "Does it have a name?" She thought for a moment. "Not yet. I will wait until it speaks." He admired her devotion. Every movement she made was careful, filled with attention. She polished the small shell until it shined, and when she placed a glowing energy core inside, the lab filled with soft blue light. It wasn't alive, but somehow it felt alive, as if her care had already given it spirit. Over the next few days, she programmed it to respond to sound, light, and touch. She taught it to move its arms and blink its single eye. When it finally powered up, it made a soft chirping noise. Lyra gasped and covered her mouth. "It greeted me," she whispered. Ethan smiled. "Looks like your creation just woke up." She turned to him with a look of pure wonder. "Then this is it," she said. "This is how humans reproduce, and by giving something of their heart." "I feel something warm." He nodded gently. "That's the start of it." She stayed late that night, speaking softly to the small robot, teaching it words, reacting to its every sound. When Ethan left the lab, he glanced back one last time. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, watching the little machine like a mother watching her newborn. Outside, the Valaran night was silent. But inside, something new had begun, a fragile connection between two worlds. The human had taught the alien about love, and the alien was learning to feel it for the first time. The next few weeks passed quietly inside the research dome. Lyra spent most of her time in the corner of the lab, talking to her small creation, the little round robot she had built. The robot made soft sounds, blinking its blue light each time she spoke to it. She laughed softly whenever it tried to mimic her words, even though its voice was broken and mechanical. Ethan often stopped his work to watch her. There was something touching about the way she treated the tiny machine, not like a tool, but like a living being. One morning, when Ethan entered the lab, he saw Lyra holding the small robot carefully in both hands. "Good morning, Dr. Ethan," she said. "I think it understands more words now." He smiled, setting his datapad aside. "That's impressive, Lyra. You've taught it well." The robot made a chirping noise, and Lyra looked down proudly. "I call it Ari," she said. "It means light seed in my language. A small light that grows when you care for it." Ethan's smile deepened. "That's a beautiful name." She tilted her head. "Is that not what human parents do? Give names to their creations, care for them, teach them to speak?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, that's what parents do. They teach their children everything they know and hope they grow better than them." Lyra looked thoughtful. "Then I am doing the human reproduction method. I have made something that grows with my care." Ethan chuckled quietly. "In a way, you're right. But human reproduction also means passing on emotions, not just knowledge." She pressed her glowing fingers against her chest. "I feel emotions when I speak to Ari. When it learns something new, I feel proud. When it makes mistakes, I feel sad." "Is this what you mean?" He stared at her for a moment, surprised by the purity of her words. "Yes, Lyra," he said gently. "That's exactly what I mean." Every day after that, Lyra spent hours with Ari. She would read human stories aloud to it, tales about family, hope, and kindness. The little machine responded with soft beeps, and she imagined it understood the meaning behind her words. The other Valari staff found it strange. They whispered that she was wasting time on something without function, but she didn't care. Each day, the light inside her small creation glowed brighter, as if reflecting her heart. One evening, Ethan found her sitting by the observation window. Outside, the red desert stretched endlessly, and two moons hung low in the sky. Ari rested on her lap, humming softly. Lyra looked up as he approached. "Dr. Ethan," she said quietly. "Today Ari tried to say my name. It could not pronounce it fully, but I understood. It called me Ma." Ethan felt warmth in his chest. "That's amazing," he said softly. "Do you know what that word means in human language?" She nodded. "Yes, I searched your database. It means mother." She looked back down at Ari, her voice trembling slightly. When it said that word, something inside me changed. I felt like I needed to protect it forever. Ethan didn't know what to say. For the first time, he saw true emotion in her. Not curiosity, not logic, but something deeply human. She wasn't pretending to understand anymore. She was living it. The next day, however, trouble began to stir. One of the senior Valari scientists noticed Lyra's project and reported it to the council. They saw her actions as strange and unproductive. To them, a maid had no right to experiment or create artificial life without permission. They summoned her for questioning. When Ethan found out, he went to the chamber with her. The tall, crystalline members of the Valari Council stood in silence as Lyra explained her actions. "I wished to learn the human method of reproduction. she said softly. I did not mean harm. I only wanted to understand what makes them live with heart. The eldest counselor tilted his glowing head. You built an imitation of life and filled it with emotion, he said coldly. Valari do not create with emotion. We create with purpose. What you have done is a waste of energy. Lyra lowered her gaze, her hands trembling slightly. Ethan stepped forward. With respect, he said firmly, what she did is not a waste. It's a discovery. She found a way to understand humanity not through data, but through empathy. You should be proud of that. The council ignored his words. You humans confuse logic with sentiment, one of them said. Your emotions make you weak, Ethan's voice hardened. Emotions are not weakness. They are strength. They are what make us care, what make us protect, what make us build something worth saving. The chamber fell silent. Lyra's eyes shimmered with faint light as she looked at him. The council finally spoke again. You may continue your studies, Dr. Cole, they said coldly. But the maid's creation will be removed. Artificial emotions are not allowed in our facilities, Lyra gasped. Please, no. Ari has done nothing wrong. It only learns. It feels. But the decision was final. They ordered the removal of her little creation. Lyra stood frozen, her heart aching in a way she had never known. Ethan tried to comfort her, but she turned away, tears glowing faintly on her cheeks, the first tears a Valari had shed in generations. That night, when the guards came to take Ari away, the small robot made a faint noise, calling again. Ma, Lyra's voice broke as she whispered, I'm here. Ethan watched helplessly as they carried the little machine out of the dome. The sound of its soft beeps faded into silence, leaving only the echo of what had been, the beginning of something like love, taken before it could grow. And in that quiet loss, Lyra finally understood what humans felt when they lost what they loved most. The laboratory felt emptier than ever. The faint hum of the machine still filled the air, but it no longer sounded alive. The corner of the room where Ari once sat was now silent, a small circle of dust marking the place where the little robot had been. Lyra came every morning and looked at that empty space before starting her work. She spoke less, smiled less, and even her natural glow had dimmed. Dr. Ethan Cole tried to speak with her, but she always answered softly, never with the same brightness as before. Lyra, he said one evening, you've barely eaten anything these last few days. You need rest. She looked at him with tired eyes. Humans rest to forget sadness. Valari do not forget. We hold it until it changes us. He sighed quietly. Then let it change you into something stronger, not broken. Lyra turned back to the empty table. I thought I understood humans, she whispered. But now I understand too much. You said reproduction means giving your heart to another. I gave mine to Ari, and now my heart feels missing. Ethan felt a tightness in his chest. Her words were so simple, yet they carried a truth he couldn't deny. Humans lost things all the time, friends, loved ones, memories. But for a Valari, this was her first true loss. A few days later, a message arrived from the Valari Council. They had dismantled Ari for research purposes. Lyra didn't speak for a long time after hearing that. She sat silently by the window, her hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the horizon where the suns met the red sand. Ethan couldn't bear it anymore. Late that night, he made a decision. He went to the restricted storage bay where the council kept old machinery. It took hours of searching, but he finally found Ari's remains. The small round shell, the cracked lens, and a tiny data core that still blinked faintly with blue light. Ethan smiled sadly. You're still here, he whispered. He carried the pieces back to his quarters and worked through the night. He replaced damaged parts, rewired circuits, and carefully restored the memory core. When the light inside the shell pulsed softly, he felt a spark of hope. Don't worry, little one, he murmured. We'll bring you home. At dawn, he found Lyra still sitting by the window. When she turned, she saw him holding something wrapped in a cloth. Her eyes widened as he gently placed it on the table. The faint blue light shone through. She froze, her lips parting in disbelief. Is that? Ethan nodded. Ari, I repaired what I could. The core was still alive. Her glowing hands trembled as she reached for the small figure. Ari, she whispered. Can you hear me? The little machine made a weak chirping sound. Then after a long pause came the soft, broken word. Ma, Tears formed in Lyra's eyes again, but this time they fell not from sorrow but from overwhelming joy. She held the robot gently against her chest as its blue light grew brighter. "You came back," she said softly. "You came back to me." Ethan watched quietly, feeling something shift in the air. The lab no longer felt cold. The connection between them, between human and alien, between creator and creation, filled the space with quiet warmth. After some time, Lyra turned to Ethan, her voice trembling but firm. "They will take it again if they find out." He nodded. "Then we won't let them. We'll keep Ari hidden until we can convince them otherwise." For the next few days, they worked secretly in the late hours, strengthening Ari's body and hiding its presence from the sensors. Lyra built a small protective cradle made from glowing crystal shards, shielding Ari's energy from detection. Every night she whispered to it, teaching it new words, telling it stories of Earth and Valara. One evening, Ari surprised them both by saying a full sentence, though in a broken robotic tone. Safe. Home." Lyra gasped and covered her mouth, overcome with emotion. "Ethan," she whispered, "it truly feels." Ethan smiled, though he knew the truth. The machine wasn't just following code. It was learning emotion from her, mirroring her heart. Her care had become its program. But word of strange activity soon reached the council again. One of the guards had seen lights from the lab after hours. The high speaker sent an inspection team to investigate. Ethan and Lyra had only a few minutes warning. "Hide Ari," Ethan said urgently. Lyra placed the small robot inside the cradle and covered it with a metallic cloth. When the door opened, the cold blue glow of the council guards filled the room. "We received reports of unauthorized experiments," the lead guard said. Ethan stayed calm. "We've been analyzing human emotion for cultural study," he said. Nothing more. The guards scanned the room but found nothing unusual. After a tense moment, they left. The door closed behind them, and Lyra let out a shaky breath. "That was close," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "Close, but worth it." She looked at him and said quietly, "Dr. Ethan, you risked much for something that is not even human." He met her gaze steadily. "That little machine represents more than just life. It represents understanding. You made it with love, something even we humans sometimes forget how to do." Lyra's eyes softened. "Then maybe both our species still have much to learn." Outside, the twin suns rose again, painting the desert gold. Lyra held Ari close, feeling its faint heartbeat of light against her palm. For the first time in her existence, she understood what it truly meant to create, not through science or command, but through compassion, and though danger still surrounded them, there was peace in her heart. Because she knew now that what she had built was not just a machine. It was the first spark of something greater, the meeting of two worlds through the simple power of care. The desert winds blew softly against the glass dome that covered the research station. Inside, the air was still, filled with the quiet rhythm of machines and faint hums of power cells. Lyra stood beside her workbench, carefully adjusting the small energy crystal that powered Ari. The tiny robot blinked twice, its single blue eye glowing brighter. "Ma," it said softly, its tone smoother now. Lyra smiled, her glow returning a little more each day. "Yes, Ari, I'm here," she whispered. Ethan, who had been observing from across the lab, couldn't help but smile too. There was something so deeply human about that exchange. A mother and a child, even if one was born of metal and light. For weeks they managed to keep Ari's existence a secret. The council rarely checked on them, and Lyra always made sure the lab's lights dimmed whenever footsteps echoed in the corridor. At night, Ethan taught her about humanity's emotional history, how love had led humans to build, protect, and even sacrifice for each other. Lyra listened carefully, sometimes asking simple questions that cut deep into the heart of his explanations. "Humans love so much," she said one night, "even though it brings pain. Why continue something that hurts?" Ethan looked up from his screen, thoughtful. "Because the joy is worth it," he said quietly. "Even if love breaks you, it gives your life meaning." Lyra thought about that long after he left. Her own heart, or whatever the Valari equivalent was, felt heavy yet alive. She began to see that emotion was not weakness. It was power, the kind that gave life its shape. But the peace didn't last. The Valari Council had received a new directive from the capital, a full inspection of all human-related experiments. The news came early one morning, delivered by a tall guard with a crystalline crest on his forehead. The Council wishes to review all hybrid research within the next solar rotation, he announced. Ethan thanked the messenger politely, but as soon as the guard left, he turned to Lyra. They're coming tomorrow, he said grimly. Her hands tightened around Ari. If they find him, they'll destroy him again, he nodded. We'll have to hide him somewhere safe. Lyra shook her head. No, I won't run again. If they take him, then I will face them. I will tell them what I've learned. Ethan frowned. You'll be punished. Maybe, she said softly. But maybe they will listen this time. That night, the two worked side by side to record Lyra's research. They documented every step of Ari's creation, every emotional reaction, every behavioral pattern. Lyra added notes written in her elegant Valari script, not scientific data, but thoughts about what she had felt. I must show them that emotions can build life, not just break it, she said. As dawn rose over the red horizon, the inspection team arrived. The council chamber was filled with tall figures whose bodies shimmered like carved crystal. Lyra stood before them with Ethan by her side, and Ari carefully placed on the table between them. The high speaker's voice echoed through the hall. You were told to cease this experiment, he said. Why have you defied the order? Lyra took a slow breath. Because you were wrong, she said quietly but firmly. This is not an experiment. This is understanding. Ari is more than a tool. It feels, it learns, it loves. Murmurs spread through the chamber. One of the elders stepped forward. Love is not measurable. It is chaos. Lyra lifted Ari into her hands, its small body glowing softly. Then chaos is life, she said. When we remove emotion, we remove growth. Humans survive because they feel. They fall, they rise, they rebuild. I have seen it in Dr. Ethan. I have felt it myself. This creation proves that emotion can exist even in what you call a machine. Ethan stepped forward to support her. She's right, he said. Humanity isn't strong because of its science or its weapons. It's strong because it cares. Because we can look at something broken and choose to fix it, even when we know it might hurt again. The high speaker was silent. His crystal face reflected both of them, the human and the alien standing together united by a shared truth. After a long pause, the speaker spoke again. If this is true, he said, then prove it. Let the creation speak for itself. Lyra gently turned to Ari and whispered, Ari, can you hear me? Tell them what you feel. The small robot blinked, its core pulsing brighter. Safe. Happy, it said softly. Love. The chamber fell silent. Even the guards stopped moving. The sound of that one word, love, echoed against the crystal walls. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. You see, she said, even machines can carry warmth when they are made with care. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. Finally, the high speaker stood. We will consider what we have witnessed, he said. Until then, your creation shall not be destroyed. Ethan exhaled in relief. Lyra's shoulders sagged, tears falling freely now. For the first time, the council did not stop her from crying. That evening, when they returned to the lab, Lyra placed Ari gently on the desk. You were brave, she whispered. You spoke for both of us, Ethan smiled. You've done more than any scientist could, Lyra. You taught a world that emotion has power. Lyra looked out at the twin suns setting in the desert. I only learned it from you, she said softly. Humans create with heart. I only followed that light. Ari chirped again, resting its small hand against her arm. Family, it said. Lyra closed her eyes. A warm light spread through her hands and into the small machine. For the first time, she didn't feel like a servant or a scientist. She felt like something entirely new. She felt human. The days following the council hearing were quiet but heavy with tension. No one knew what decision the Valari leaders would make. The laboratory remained under watch, though no one dared to enter. Lyra continued her daily work as if nothing had changed, but every sound from the hallway made her tense. Ari sat near her, glowing softly, unaware of the danger that still surrounded them. Ethan could see the worry in her eyes, though she tried to hide it. They haven't decided yet, he said one evening as they checked the data logs. But I think you reached them. They saw something they didn't understand, and that means they're thinking. Lyra looked down at Ari, who blinked twice and tilted its small head. I hope so, she whispered. I don't want them to fear him. He only wants to live. Ethan nodded. That's what every being wants. The next morning, a message arrived from the High Speaker himself. The council would send inspectors to perform one final evaluation on Ari. If he was proven dangerous or unstable, he would be permanently dismantled. If not, the council would reconsider their laws about emotion-based creation. Lyra read the message twice, then looked up at Ethan. They are not testing Ari, she said softly. They are testing me, Ethan frowned. Then we'll show them who you are. They worked together all day preparing for the test. Lyra recorded Ari's responses to different sounds, emotions, and questions. The small robot seemed more aware than ever before. When she spoke to it with warmth, its light grew brighter. When she grew sad, it dimmed. Ethan noticed the strange synchronization and began documenting every moment. That evening, as the red suns dipped below the desert, Lyra sat beside the glowing dome window, holding Ari in her lap. Do you understand what will happen tomorrow? She asked softly. Ari chirped faintly, its voice fragile. Mom, not afraid. Her chest tightened. I wish I could say the same. Ethan came closer, watching them both. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember what you've done, Lyra. You've shown both species that creation can come from compassion. That's something no council can erase. She smiled faintly. You always say things that make heavy hearts lighter. He shrugged with a small grin. Maybe that's our human method, too. The next morning, the inspectors arrived. The lab was filled with cold light as 3 Valari counselors entered, their tall forms glowing faintly. The High Speaker's voice echoed through the dome. This is your final demonstration, he said. Show us that this machine is more than a reflection of code. Lyra stepped forward, her glowing hands steady. Ari stood on the table, blinking softly. Ari, she said, her voice calm, and can you greet them? The little robot turned its head and said, Hello, I'm Ari. The council members watched closely. Lyra continued. Ari, what are you? There was a pause. Then, in a tone softer than before, Ari said, I am. Light I learn. I feel. One of the counselors leaned forward. You feel? Yes, Ari replied. When Ma smiles, I feel warm. When she is sad, I feel heavy. I want her to be happy. The room grew silent. Even the High Speaker seemed at a loss for words. Lyra took a small step forward. This is not just a program, she said. It is understanding. Ari has learned emotion through care. That means feeling can be shared. Not just coded, Ethan added. If emotion can be learned, then compassion can be taught. And that's something worth more than any machine. The High Speaker looked at them both. You speak of compassion as though it is energy. Lyra nodded. It is. It moves between beings and gives them purpose. It is the true form of reproduction. Heart to heart, not just cell to cell. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the speaker gestured toward Ari. If what you say is true, then this creation must be able to act from empathy without command. Let it prove itself. Lyra looked at Ari. Ari, she said gently, I will step away now. If you can, show them what you've learned. She turned her back and walked toward the window. After a few seconds, Ari's sensors detected a new movement. One of the guards dropped a heavy metal tool that landed near the High Speaker's foot. The sharp sound startled everyone. Ari's sensors flashed and it quickly rolled forward, placing its small body between Lyra and the source of the sound. The High Speaker looked down in surprise. It protected her. Lyra turned, her hands trembling. He acted without order, she said quietly. He protected someone he loves. Ethan smiled softly. That's as human as it gets. For a long moment, the speaker said nothing. Finally, he turned to the others. The creation will not be destroyed, he said. It will be studied, but not as a machine. As life. Relief washed over the room. Lyra knelt beside Ari and whispered, You did it. You showed them. The little robot blinked once and said, Family safe. Ethan placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. You've changed more than their laws today. You've changed their hearts. That night the lab was quiet again, but the silence felt peaceful. Lyra sat beside the table where Ari rested, her fingers tracing soft patterns on the smooth metal shell. I never thought I would feel this way, she said. I never thought I could love, Ethan smiled. That's the human part of you now. Once you start feeling, you never stop. She looked up at him, her eyes glowing gently. Then maybe humans reproduce not only through children, but through emotions that never die. He nodded. Exactly. Many years had passed since that day in the laboratory when Ari had stood before the Villari Council and changed their view of life forever. The research dome was no longer a secret place hidden in the desert. It had become a center of cooperation between humans and Villari, now called the Genesis Project. Here, scientists from both worlds worked together to study emotions, energy, and the strange bridge that had formed between logic and feeling. Lyra was no longer just a maid. She had become the head of the Emotional Research Division, respected by both her people and humans. Her glow was brighter now, her voice stronger, and her presence calm like morning light. The once quiet alien who barely spoke now led lectures that inspired young Villari to explore the meaning of compassion. She often told them, "To feel is not weakness. It is the universe's way of telling us we are alive." Ari had grown too. Its body was rebuilt with advanced materials, and its voice was now clear and warm. It could understand humor, kindness, and even sadness. It worked beside Lyra as her assistant, often greeting every new visitor with a cheerful, "Welcome, friend," words that made even the most serious scientists smile. Ethan had returned to Earth years ago, but his teachings lived on in the Genesis archives. Sometimes, when Lyra walked through the quiet halls at night, she still heard his voice in her memory. "Love is not science, Lyra. It's a promise we keep, and even when no one's watching." She missed him deeply, though she didn't call it sadness. The Villari language had no perfect word for that feeling, so she named it echo warmth, the warmth that remains after someone is gone. One evening, as she watched the sun sink beyond the dunes, a communication light blinked on her console. It carried an old Earth signal, encoded with a name she hadn't seen in years. "Dr. Ethan Cole," she whispered. Her voice trembled. She opened the message, and his familiar face appeared on the screen, older now, hair gray, eyes kind as ever. "Lyra," he said, smiling softly, "I hope this message reaches you. I've seen what you've done. The reports, the peace council between our worlds, the emotional energy theory you helped create. You've done more than I ever dreamed possible. I'm proud of you." Her eyes glimmered with faint light as she listened. "I'm nearing the end of my time," Ethan continued, "but I'll always remember what you taught me too, that love isn't bound to a body or even a world. It's something we leave behind in others. You've carried that forward. Thank you, my friend." The message ended, leaving the room silent except for the soft hum of the machines. Lyra stood still for a long moment, then turned toward the window. The stars above seemed closer than ever. Ari rolled beside her quietly, its voice gentle. "Ma, you are sad?" She smiled faintly, resting her hand on its smooth head. "No, Ari, I am full. Sometimes hearts feel heavy, not from pain, but from love that has nowhere to go." Ari blinked twice. "Human feeling?" "Yes," she said, "human. And Villari too." That night she decided to visit Earth one last time. The journey took several weeks through the transport gates, but when she finally reached the blue planet, it felt strangely familiar. The smell of rain, the sound of wind in the trees, the warmth of sunlight. She traveled to a small coastal town where Ethan had once lived. There, on a quiet hill overlooking the sea, stood a memorial stone. It read, "Dr. Ethan Cole, who taught the stars to feel." Lyra knelt beside it, her glowing hands trembling slightly. "You kept your promise, Ethan," she whispered. "You taught me how to live." Ari floated beside her, softly recording the moment for the archives. "He made you strong," it said. Lyra nodded. "He made me human." She placed a small crystal on the stone, a Villari tradition for remembrance. And as she did, the crystal began to glow faintly with both blue and gold light. It shimmered brighter until it matched the glow of her hands. "Goodbye, my teacher," she said softly. "Your heart lives here still, in me and in every being that learns to care." As she stood, the sea breeze brushed against her face, carrying a soft whisper that almost sounded like a voice. "Well done, Lyra." She smiled through tears, knowing it was only the wind, but deep inside it felt real. When she returned to Villari Prime, the Genesis Project had grown beyond her imagination. Children of both races studied together, laughing and learning without fear or difference. Emotional energy was now recognized as a real science. Empathic energy. Flow, a discovery that began with one alien, Maid, who wanted to understand the human heart. Lyra often told the young students about that story. She would stand in the Great Hall and say, "Once a human taught me that reproduction is not only the creation of bodies but of hearts. When you care, when you protect, when you share hope, that is how new life begins. The young ones always listened in silence, and Ari would chirp proudly beside her. Years later, when Lyra grew older, her glow began to fade to a softer light, like a candle at peace. On her final night, she sat beneath the twin suns with Ari resting in her lap. "Ma," Ari said quietly, "will you go away like Dr. Ethan?" Lyra smiled, stroking the top of its small head. "Not go away," she whispered. "Just change form. That is what humans do. And now what Valari do too." Ari's voice quivered. "Then who will teach me?" She leaned close and whispered, "You will. Teach others to feel. That is how my light will live on." As the night deepened, the last rays of gold bathed the dome, and Lyra's light slowly faded into a gentle glow that spread across the room. And from that day on,